Hello everyone and welcome to the Voice of Terminus show. And I'm joined today by Lex. Say hello, Lex.
Hello!
And joined by Josh. Josh, you're kind of sitting a bit more to...
I know, it's a bit weird.
Let me turn your camera a bit, dude. Let me go and get you put more into the picture there. And we'll adjust
It's all
there.
fine a few seconds there, yeah.
There we go. Whoops. Sorry for this, guys. Josh screwed us all up. Blame Josh.
I was gonna say I'd blame that Lexer guy. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
So, today's show is going to be about faction. And when we talk about faction, you guys can see some of the things that we brought up on the screen. Factions related to, your grouping, areas, trade skill, XP, recipes, etc, etc. And we're going to start off basically getting Josh's and Lex's view on what they think about what faction is. My personal opinion, faction is basically the livelihood of the game. Without faction, the game has really no meaning. You need faction as a time sink. It's used as a time sink. It's used also to define the game's dynamics and livelihood, basically creating the lore. Without that, basically without having faction adding faction to this, the game has no real meaning. So what's your take on it, guys? We'll start with you, Lex. What does faction mean for you?
Well, as a programmer, to me, faction is the mechanic that interconnects everything else. And from a non-programmer view, it's the glue that holds the game together and holds all of the mechanics, all the features, the lore, everything. It sticks everything together. It's just the glue, I guess.
Yeah. And for me, it basically adds that extra layer to the game that actually breathes life into the faction, the cities, the NPCs, and actually keeps the game interesting in the long run. That's it for me.
Yeah, definitely. And if we look at the games that are out there currently, and we look at the faction systems that are currently there, it's come to a point, from my personal view, where all it is a time sink and a grind. There's no real reason apart from having to go. You get forced basically to go and do faction on certain races, and the reward for that is not really there at the end. The items are technically pointless in most games. They're really hard to come by and take a long time because you need certain currencies, etc., or you need to have a certain amount of XP in general to buy them. What I would love to see happen with faction and Pantheon is give it real meaning, give it real depth. I don't mind doing the grind as long as the faction has absolute meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that we're all very familiar with what faction is, how faction works. It's ever since EverQuest 1, I think that was the first game that actually implemented the faction system. If you don't count MUDs, just saying, just for 3D MMOs here. So don't yell at me. And it was a basic, simple system. One mob or one creature entity is connected to one faction, kind of thing. And I think it's time that we step it up a little bit and change it, but keep it true to its roots.
Yeah.
But change it up, make it a little more complex. We are in the age of supercomputers and more computing power in your phone than servers back in the day. I think we can spice it up a little bit now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that factions being the lifeblood over the times really need to step it up and create a more life in the actual areas that you go into, and actually that evolve over time. So they keep on upgrading their faction towards the PCs, the NPCs as well.
And
so, yeah.
And another thing to add to that, Josh, is basically not just, over time, but in most games you have faction for, you have to go and do faction for a certain race or a certain NPC or towards a certain monster kind, and then when an expansion comes out or something new gets added into the game, that faction becomes obsolete. It has you have no desire for it anymore. And technically, if we have, for instance, the 9 races and we have the factions for them as well, we should have to constantly be able to go back to that and build upon that relationship. That faction should never be obsolete. Faction should carry on. It doesn't have to always carry on, but they can bring it back when they bring out an X-Pack or bring out or decide to add something new to the game. Work on the existing factions, add backstories that connect to the existing factions and bring them back into play. That's one thing I definitely want to see happen. That faction actually means something for the longer period of time, and you might always have to come back to it. And what we built up today is we actually sat down, me and Josh and Lex, and we broke down faction ideas into different segments, and I'll give you guys all the key segments that we're going to go and talk about a bit today. We bounced around ideas on guild faction. We bounced around ideas on adventuring side of the game, so adventure faction. We then did the Tradeskill in faction. Then we have the Tradeskill and adventure faction, your general faction basically. And then we talked about a new possible way to implement faction into the game, and we called that basically global faction. And we're going to go and talk a bit about all these these 5 segments individually. And I think the easiest one to go for is we'll just basically start with the guild faction idea. The idea behind it is to have guilds be able to collect faction through the members that are in the guild doing their faction quests, etc. And you have your guild faction or your guild quest that give you faction as well for your individual guilds. And we talked about how could this work. Is it something that can be done? Does it make sense? And the general idea is that you can basically picture the guild having a kind of AA tree that can be unlocked. And what this would do, it would unlock certain items, abilities, maybe even patterns for crafters, maybe even spells, etc. that reward the guild and its guild members in general. And then we thought about basically, that's a benefit for a guild, but we also thought that factions should be able to decay as well, because you don't want to have guilds go out there, grind max faction, because that's what annoyed me the most, is you go out, you grind your faction, and you never have to do it again. You should have to maintain your faction. It shouldn't be something that you achieve, you got the max, you've reached the max faction, and you basically go out and you have to keep it maintained. So if the guild does not go out and do frequent guild quests or whatever it is that is going to be done to keep this faction alive, you have the chance of losing the access to these certain abilities, etc. that you have unlocked. Josh, do you want to go and bring up some of the ideas that we talked about for the guild faction, how this could work?
Yeah, well, just speaking about the decay side of it, certainly if you don't speak to somebody for 6 months, clearly they're going to be cool when you speak to them again after such a long period instead of phoning them every day. So yeah, your faction is going to decrease over time with any group that you aren't interested in. So you have to keep up those relations. But dealing with guild faction ideas, we spoke about, for instance, if the guild is going to go and raid, one of the ideas we thought about was actually this you being able to bring across somebody to actually repair at the entrance of the raid area, so that either the costs are fairly cheap or even free, depending on your guild's faction at the end of the day. That's just one of the ideas.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So basically, go on, Lex.
One thing that I'd like to add about with guild factions is that, I mean, I'm all for that, but it should be while you're wearing, your guild tabard or like your organization colors, because that's how you represent, or at least that's how you would. Crusaders would wear their tabard to show the church and all that stuff. And if you are not wearing colors, then you're an individual, and those actions are your own. Whereas if you have your tabard on, it's more than just you. It affects you yourself because people know, hey, the guy in the yellow armor, he's not so nice. But then you start seeing that the organization you're with, and obviously the word's going to spread. So while I'm all for all the guild stuff, I would like to see it be something where, like, say I'm an evil character, because Scar, I join a guild that's primarily good players. Well, that shouldn't keep me from playing with them. But that should mean that if I put my tabard on, while I'm still a bad person, to strangers would kind of look at me favorably because I'm with all these good people. Well, if they vouch for them, okay. Because it's kind of like, hanging out with a group of friends. Someone brought someone else along, everyone accepts them. It's like, hey, okay, he must be cool, Yeah. But that way, I can take that tabard off, and I can still go about my business my way without affecting the guild. Rather than it being forced upon one way or the other.
Exactly. Good idea.
Yeah. Good idea. Yep.
Good addition. We talked about basically these abilities, etc., that you would unlock. They would be something that have long cooldowns, obviously, because they are obviously very strong, rewarding, and it would require the guild to actually invest a lot of time and a lot of grind to actually unlock these systems. These aren't things that you can easily obtain, within a couple of months or anything. This is going to take you ages to obtain this, get these different abilities. You would actually even require certain individual adventurer factions and Tradeskill factions, but we'll get into that in a bit. So some of the other ideas we brought up was like special buffs, raid buffs, maybe banners that give you a short duration buff, for instance like a 2% HP boost for the entire raid or whatever, for a time period of X hours, days, whatever you want to do, with a long cooldown period. Then we talked about having maybe special unlocks, unlocking certain things for the guild hall, for instance. If you could relate that to the guild discussion, to quickly just go and bring this up. Imagine you're having a guild, and you can unlock certain areas of that guild due to the guild faction. So you start off with your basic guild, and you have these special unlocks where you can unlock the armory section, or you can unlock maybe the tavern of the guild. You can unlock maybe the prison if you want to have a prison in your guild, and such and such. So these aren't really rewards that are going to impact the game where it becomes an unbalancing. It's something that rewards you as a player, as a guild, etc., and is a temporary thing, like even a warning system. Now this is going to sound pretty crazy. Josh, you want to go and talk quickly about the warning system and special item?
Well, that's pretty cool. With your faction that you get with this also relates to the city faction as well that you're in. So the faction that you get as you go up in the guild, the higher you go, once you achieve maybe a certain status of faction, you get an item that will actually warn you when maybe a mob that you're needing for your guild is actually popping up and appearing. This item will warn you, and it might have a cooldown of, I don't know, maybe 7 days or however long, but it's there for your guild, firstly, to be able to say, well, hey, the guy's up now, we can go for it, instead of people just haphazardly just walking around and bumping into it. So yeah, so basically the city will look out for this monster around the area and warn you that, hey guys, it's up, go deal with it.
Exactly. It's kind of like a reward from the city where you have your guild. It's kind of like you got the city guards going out, or rangers or whatever, scouts, looking out for this encounter to come up, and there's pros and cons to this. People will see this maybe as an exploit, but the way I see it basically is this makes guilds and raid forces actually think twice about go and raid a certain mob. Because if you have this warning system, for instance, has a long cooldown, yes, that's okay. It makes you actually get your guild involved to get caught up on that update, maybe because they might need that encounter, that NPC, etc. It's also a cool way to balance out the raiding, because we know there's going to be no instancing. So there's going to be Havoc running around, going into the dungeons, getting certain NPCs and whatnot, getting certain raid encounters. So there's going to be basically a contest. You know, it's going to be a competition. Yeah. This will actually help balance that out. There might be certain exploits to this system. This is just some of the ideas we're throwing out there. Lex, have you got the sheet up as well?
Yes.
Yeah, you have. Okay. Anything to add to the warning system?
Well, that's something that's going to be very touchy to do if it's something that VR even entertains. I mean, you could say it's highly expensive, but you hire a scout to send to each location, and if something pops up or suspected going to pop up, it would be like, hey, warning, maybe in 2 hours, but there should be a chance that, it's going to take longer or shorter or whatnot. It can't be pinpoint accurate, because in EverQuest 1, we had this issue with people camping names. Not going to say who. And basically had like 6 or 7 stopwatches plus a whole bunch of stopwatches on his desktop. And the minute one would go off, he'd run over there, because it gave me like a 15-minute warning. So I get down there, kill it, move to the next one, and I go about this. We'll go about this rotation all day.
Yep.
So we want to avoid that, because we want to give everyone a fair shot. We don't want people stepping on each other's toes. But if I don't see it being a bad thing, because if raids or names are actually a big deal, you're not going to be able to hit them all, even if you are the biggest, baddest guild in the game. Because it's still setup time, travel time, prep time, and by the time you're set up over here on this side of the world, well, there's another guild going over here, so you're just not going to make them all. Yeah.
So you want to...
another idea, I think, and I don't know, but this is where the actual city will reward you with a guild that has done so much for that city over time, and it has to be over a long period of time, that it actually rewards you with prime real estate for your guild to build on. And this obviously, I don't see Pantheon putting this out maybe in the first year even, depending on how successful it's going to be, and also if it's got the capacity to even do things like this. But would be cool to be able to say, we've got this spot by the waterfall over here to build our guild, and we earned it. Thank you very much.
And you could do a lot of stuff like that with just prestige items. They're like, oh, look, now you get a big fancy watchtower or something. It can overall be even meaningless rewards that are just eye candy.
Yeah.
I've done stuff in games where it's like, does this help me at all? Nope, but it's freaking cool.
Yep. So another idea that we threw up there as possible faction rewards for guilds is, loot equipment caravans for raids maybe that have a certain cooldown time, and this is something that would basically need master craftsmen. A certain amount of crafters to actually design this. It's basically, you can unlock this caravan that would basically be there for your raid and carry all your situational gear maybe for your raid. You could even maybe use it for loot even. You could have like a loot caravan maybe, where you put the loot in there and you deal with that stuff later. You don't have to worry about it right away. You can put it into that loot caravan, boom, at the end of the raid, you got the loot caravan, it stays up for maybe a day or whatever, then it disappears and you can call it back in whatever certain amount of time you're going to, what we could define that is called reasonable. City mounts was another one that maybe give you a slightly faster run speed or mount speed, so you get like a 2% or 5% faster run speed as a reward for grinding faction for that city with your guild. Lower taxes. Due to faction, you pay lower taxes for your guild hall, you pay lower rent for the guild hall, etc.
With that, though, I would like to say that I'd actually like to see a meaningful change, because it was in a lot of these other older games where the higher your faction, the less you paid from vendors. But it was a difference between, like, 1 silver. You know, in a game that goes copper, silver, or gold, platinum, 1 silver meant nothing.
Yep.
You know, it was like, I can make the difference by killing something half my level. You know, it's got to be meaningful, but at the same time, I'm not saying to make it so you lose this massive currency sink from the economy. Just, it's got to be noticeable. Because then, if I've got the spare money, there should be other areas for me to spend it anyway.
Yep. Should we move on to anything to add to this? Guild faction. You got any ideas, Lex? Anything you would like to see maybe guilds have? That's not on this sheet, maybe?
Well, I'll clarify my little tabard's idea.
Yep, go on.
Because what I was thinking was, you know, you're not going to actually, like, inherit the faction of, like, we'll say, the guild leader or something like that, right? No. Because me as a Scar, if I'm running around eating halflings, you know, it doesn't matter if I'm wearing a 3-piece suit and tie and a big top hat. They're still going to know it's me. They're still going to hate me. You know, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing. But I'm just saying it will give you a slight boost, so that if I'm not really liked to the point where the guards might finally start attacking me, but we got to run through a town for a raid or a grouping or something, I put on my guild tabard. It gives it a boost to where they still don't like me, but they won't attack me on sight anymore. You know, because I mean, who knows? Maybe I ran through as a lower level and accidentally killed something that gave me a huge faction hit. You know, but this way, it's like, instead of going, I need people to invis me, I need someone to escort me, I need a teleport, I need to, you know, spend 4 hours trying to get around this town. I could just put my tabard on, get this little boost, and because I'm with my people, I can go through there in relative ease without completely demolishing the fact that if I'm one evil SOB to these people, they'll still come at me, regardless. That's kind of what I meant. I was just kind of keeping things a little too general, and I think chat was just like, hang him by his toes!
Josh, do you want to go and bring up the first point on the Adventure faction? We're going to talk a bit about the Adventure faction, and we had some cool ideas for this. Josh, you want to go and bring up the first one?
Well, I think what we did discuss was was basically between the cities, having the actual caravans moving between that, and I'm not too sure if that's what you're referring to.
No, wasn't.
No. Okay.
Right.
You speak about it then.
Right. Basically, we talked about faction and what it connects to, and you guys can see on the screen that we have, you know, kill on site is basically faction related, etc. Items, grinding, rewards, questing, and we thought about, you know, what about language? What about connecting language to faction? So you don't necessarily just go out and try and learn a language. You might have to grind some factions. So you basically start off with the basic understanding of a language, and the time you spend, for instance, in the city in Wild's End along the halflings, the time you spend in that city is kind of like you basically gain faction towards them. And the further along you get in that faction, the more time you spend in that city, the more understanding you get with that language. So you become a basic understander, a common understander, and then you get generally brought in. Your language gets generally upgraded for the time you spend in and the faction that you have. So connect language maybe to faction in some areas, gives it a new twist.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so you're learning these primers the whole time.
Yeah. I think if I were working for VR, well, I'm not. Well, I mean, it is a good idea because it's different, and if kind of makes people get an extra reward for grinding faction, it might be considered that it's implied that the more you're talking this language, the more you're talking with the locals, and therefore the more they're going to like you. Because that one, in terms of being a programmer, it seems like it's a lot of work for less return. Just without going into more detail of it. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's a good idea. It just, I don't think this might be something that VR actually goes after, simply because just at face value, it looks like more work than you get in return at this point.
Right, so the next one was the items that you gather. Josh, want to go and talk about the items in the world that you gather, trash items, what you can technically do with them as an idea?
Well, the idea, sure. Well, the idea behind this was that, you're going to get trash items that you're going to pick up, swords, I don't know, bones, helmets, etc., from all sorts of creatures. So you're going to either sell this for lousy few coins to a vendor, but the nice thing about this is those items may also be valuable to the city in terms of the city protecting it. So you sell it to that city for a bit of faction as well, bonus faction to yourself, and that way you can build up your faction with that city by just giving them I wouldn't say trash items, but items that city may need in times of war. So for an adventurer, it could be those type of items, and perhaps even for a trade skiller, it might be certain rare plants that might drop that they gather up. And that way you're going to keep on increasing your faction.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, as long as they keep it kind of with the lore or the world, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you wouldn't go to a city blacksmith to give him rocks when he wants bits of metal, which are still technically trash items. So my fear is that it's going to be one of these it's so mundane, repeatable quests. I would like to see it mix up a little bit. Maybe sometimes it's metal bits, maybe sometimes it's like belt buckles or whatever.
Let me go and quickly clarify on it, because there is something related towards currency. So I'm going to quickly go and bring this up. The whole idea behind this idea with the trash items came from the idea what we did on our currency show. We talked about basically having different taxes, etc., different import costs, and this, that, and the other. And the idea is, let's say you have your general vendors that you would go to and sell your trash items, or you go to the broker and you put it on the broker and you go and sell it. Why not expand on that idea and say you have your general vendor that gives you very little coin for that trash that you've got, and then you have your individual vendors within the cities that take cloth, or take swords, or take shields, or take metals, or this, that, and the other, take plate armor, so you're going to get more coin for that. But you as an adventurer can also go to your guild of assassins, or guild of crusaders, or guild of dire lords, etc. Whatever that guild is going to be called, that faction inside the city related to you. If you go to them and you give them those items, you get faction towards your class faction. Because the general idea, what I would love to see happen to adventurers and trade skillers, is that they also have an individual faction based on their class and their trade skill that goes up individually, and you kind of like have a rank system, and you can work your way to become a city master tradesman of, let's say, woodworking, a city master tradesman of armor, a city master tradesman of weaponsmith, and so and so and so. But you have to have the same reward for adventurers as well, because there's going to be people that want to just craft, there's going to be people that just want to do the adventuring side, there's going to be people that want to do both. So we have to kind of reward the adventuring side as well. So you become, maybe as a tank, you become a city sergeant at arms. If you're a priest, you become the city archpriest of the clergy, and so forth and so forth. This gives you special titles. This maybe give you special access to special abilities. Like, the idea was basically to with these certain titles that you can earn that take a long time to achieve, it's not something that everybody's going to be able to get right away. It's going to take a whole lot of work and a whole lot of faction grinding and doing this, that, and the other. But you could maybe upgrade the city. With that, you can implement city events that happen. And we'll get into that in a bit when we get to the trade skilling part, because that's where we put that all down. So that was the general idea with the trash items, that you can also give them to individual vendors as well. So you get faction for it, you get more coin if you go to a specific vendor that has... So you got 10 shields in your inventory, you go to the shieldsmith, you sell him the shields, you get more coin for it. Reward you by actually spending the time sorting out your bags and going through to individual vendors, or using it to get factions. That was the idea.
Yeah. See, I like the idea of having alternative uses for garbage. Because more often than not, I'm a pack rat. I'm the kind of player that, oh look, you just killed a boar. You have fresh boar urethra. I'm going to go sell it. It's only worth a copper, but I'm going to sell it because I need the money. I don't know what for, but I do. But being able to say that this trash is useful some other way, I think that's going to actually turn my pack ratting into overdrive, I guess. I will be making city runs nonstop, but I like say you could sell a stack of orc shoes for 20 silver, okay? Yeah, I would like the option to actually give those to, we'll say, a priest once, so that he can clothe the homeless. You give them to him, he gives you faction, and you only get 10 silver. Cool. Now I got options. Not a lot, but I have some options, which that's going to be one of the big key things with games nowadays is give us options, but not too much and not too little.
Yeah. Yep. Well, Dark Soul Omega says something over there where he speaks about what do you think of diminishing returns on farm turn-in items. That does raise a point that he says over there that if we get a kobold encampment where we can just keep on farming them and we keep on taking their shoes day in, day out, and we suddenly flood the area of that city with those shoes, well, those things shouldn't be worth as much in the long run because,
or maybe they don't want them anymore.
Yeah, exactly. There's too many shoes now in the faction market, so to speak. So why not want something else? Another aspect of this as well could be that the higher you are as an adventurer, perhaps the stuff isn't going to be as
lucrative.
Maybe
to that city.
Maybe it's even something that you can't even take anymore or turn in for faction.
Yeah.
Maybe you have, depending on what tier you are, you have to go and grind that tier you're set in. Anything underneath that is worthless to the faction-specific turn-in. Because you're going to find areas where you're going to sit down, they drop tons of stuff all the time, and it brings you a bit of coin. But this gives you options, like Lex said. It gives you options. You can think about trying to go and build up your faction, so give you alternative turn-ins and alternative ways to sell your items and use your items. You can pass them on to a guild mate maybe to help get his faction up. And the faction we're talking about that you're going to receive isn't huge. It's a very small, very minor faction you're going to get.
1 point for a stack of 5.
Exactly,
kind of thing,
something like that. It's going to be very minor, but it's something that you can do as an alternative to turn in to help you get that faction going.
It also creates an economic market for garbage.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, it won't be much of a market. I mean, obviously, you're not going to make yourself rich, but you'll see stuff now for sale, and people will want it. People will be willing to give you coin for it. So that's another market. It makes people talk in chat because I don't think it was going to be an auction house, which makes the server feel alive, and it's just it cascades in benefits.
Another aspect of it as well could be that you could take it to a crafter and they can break it down into maybe bars of copper, raw materials, which actually is more
that's amazing
important for faction itself.
Yep.
Because the city can make use of it over a longer period.
Yep, and we'll get into that as well, because let's go and talk about other things. The Aventure faction, for instance. You know, you can even connect that to perception, to areas to access. You could add faction that basically unlock maybe perception. They unlock certain areas that you could never go there before. You want to go there, or you don't know about it, or it's something that's been introduced into the game as maybe a preview to what's coming up in the next patch that's going to be coming. So with faction, you unlock certain things or unlock certain access. Imagine going into the tavern in your city, respected city, hundreds of times you've been into that tavern. The guy in the corner just sits there and does nothing. Sits there and drinks away. Now you've come in that 101 time, and all of a sudden he starts talking to you, telling you a story about an area. You don't know why you got it. You know, you've been grinding faction. This is stuff that makes you actually go out and hunt and think about, hey, why is this guy talking to me? And then you start doing this perception quest for him, or you start doing this quest series for him, and it starts to unlock and tell you about why you're getting it, because you've unlocked this faction. So this is another way to view faction. Faction can help in so many ways, and has a broad function. You can even use this. Another idea was to use this maybe to unretire a progeny class. You know, because the general idea was you can basically retire your character at max level, boom, you create a progeny, and he has certain traits from your main character that you retire. And there's mixed discussions on this, there's mixed feelings about this. So this is maybe something that can be introduced into the game, because, you know, we all fall in love with our main characters. You create it, you give it a name, you grow with it. You don't want to, you know, really retire it. You've grown fond of that character. It's your identification in the virtual world. So maybe you can unretire this character by doing faction, maybe. So that helps as well. And that's another way to ease into the progeny idea. So it doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing if you can unlock it by doing maybe faction, have faction connected to it, have a long quest series connected. So that's some of the another idea that we brought in.
Yeah. To address chat, Glenn said, "What if faction unlocks certain quests?" I'm almost certain that's we're going to see that.
Yep.
It's been in EverQuest, EverQuest 2. It's been in World of Warcraft. It's been, you know, just through the ages.
Yeah.
It's something that it's silly not to have it at this point.
It's definitely,
because everyone expects it to be in. How much it'll be in and how severe that will be in Pantheon is yet to be determined.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling faction will play an awful lot because, I mean, let's face it. If I'm eating halfling babies every other day of the week, they're not going to want to give me any quests. They're like, no, you go away. Shoot, be gone. You know? Meanwhile, whoever doesn't like the halflings will be like, yes, here, I need some work done. You're the guy for me.
I mean, that's what we was talking about, basically. You know, with them having certain areas, certain access, etc., being unlocked. That was the idea, basically, of, you know, you're grinding faction all over the place, whatever you're doing, and all of a sudden that guy in the bar starts talking to you and offers you quests and stuff like this. So, and it's something that we definitely need, because if you view faction from a real life point, we have faction in real life. You have faction at work. You have faction in your personal life. You have people.
You've got faction going to a restaurant.
Exactly. You got faction in your guild. You have guild members that you have a higher faction to, where you go and talk about more personal stuff, and you have guild members, for instance, where you talk about normal, everyday stuff. And that's all based on faction. So, and it's definitely something that is required. But not to get off topic with that idea. Special items from faction vendors, right? When we look at the items that you can get from these vendors, when you start off, it's cool. You're at the max level, it's cool, it's new, the expansions, the next expansion is at least a year away, but these items really have no value. So we had an idea, basically, instead of giving us tons of rings and armor pieces that might look and sound cool, but they're hard to obtain because they require ridiculous amounts of faction grinding. They require a certain status that you have to receive. They require maybe a special currency to go and obtain them. Why not give people items that have a longer durability throughout their time frame. So let's say we have a faction X in the game, an expansion comes out, faction X is no longer interesting because the new expansions come out, the new gear's there. Why not give these items a longer durability, a longer usability, and not become obsolete because of an expansion pack? Or instead of putting items in there, why not put certain buffs that maybe, let's say for instance now you've gone and done faction in the desert for the desert people. When you're in that desert and you've grinded the faction, you can get a buff for that environment that gives you a benefit for that environment. When you're in that zone, you have a buff that you can purchase because you grinded the faction for the desert that gives you maybe 10% more humidity, so you don't, dehydrate and stuff like that. So those are ideas that could be put into the game on the vendors, rather than just giving us, at the end of the day, trash, because it's basically only going to have a very short lifespan. Make it worthwhile. Maybe have certain appearance, instead of giving us armor pieces and stuff like that that we can wear, why not make it a fluff item? More or less, that every race, every NPC that's out there, every culture that's out there, we can actually get their appearance items as rewards for their armor that they're wearing. We can get as appearance items to wear. That has more value. It doesn't necessarily give me any benefits, but it's something that I might want to do in my spare time, and it's a reward that actually has a use and doesn't become obsolete.
Yeah. That's a whole other show there about like expansions and how to make things not turn obsolete. That's a good 4-hour discussion right there, because honestly, nothing bothers me more than going into a game, having very fond memories of an area, and I'm 2 or 3 expansions behind because I took a break. Come back and there's nobody around because there's no reason to be there anymore.
Yeah.
It's current expansion or nothing, and I'm sitting there going, why does it have to be this way? It shouldn't.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you look at EverQuest 2, one of the items that people go back to all the time, it doesn't matter if the item is a level 70 item, and that's immunity to fear as being an item. It seems to be a very extremely rare thing to get, but once you get an item, it's very, very good to have. So, I think things like that seem to flow over expansions, and the more powerful you get will still be valuable from maybe level 20 all the way through to level 50. Because, hey, who the hell wants to be feared over a cliff in the middle of a fight?
Just make it an item that doesn't have a lifespan on it. It's a fear item, and depending on your level, it will automatically adapt to that level of effect. Like the curing, for instance, in EverQuest 2. You have cures that only cure you from level 1 to 50, then you got the next cure that cures you from level 50 to 100. So instead of giving these items an expire date on them, let them grow depending on what level you might be. So they hold an actual value. Maybe the fear resist for tanks. They will chew that stuff up. They will go and grind that faction.
Exactly.
Now, Lex, you want to add something?
Well, I know it's not a feasible idea. I just thought it'd be neat to where if you had a heal, you have a heal, you get a faction grind. Now all of a sudden your reward for getting to max faction was, if you're healing someone that has higher faction with that particular faction, you get a boost to the heal. Completely unfeasible, but it'd still be kind of neat.
Yeah.
So
another thing, sorry, I just want to add to that. I mean, if we're looking at expansions and how they might work, another idea might be that, hey, if this city is built on a cliff, for instance, you might grind the faction to the top where you get this pattern that allows you to open up an area on the side of that cliff that you can climb down that you wouldn't have access to before. So it opens up a new area for you. And
Like
that
their
could be
secret
part of the
passageway.
expansion. Yeah, exactly. Something like that. That only you at a higher faction can actually have access to.
Well, I'll just say one more thing on expansions, and then we can move on. I'm just going to beg VR. I will do your guys' laundry. I will deliver beer to your house. If when expansion time comes around, or even additional content, that you revisit existing content,
Yep.
please.
Yes.
Exactly.
Just change it. Just change it. Don't got to do a lot to it. Just change it.
Yep.
Make it relevant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bring that faction alive. Keep it alive. So let's go and move on to a quick question in chat. Faction mounts. Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. Maybe getting faction mounts as a reward as well.
Just keep them not crazy.
Yeah, just don't make it crazy. Then it's perfectly fine. Yeah, it's because people definitely. I like the idea from Dark Souls in addition. With faction mounts, a mount faction, some places may not allow you to ride in a Velociraptor into town. Exactly. Boom. There you go. Perfect example how to bring in the culture of faction mounts.
Yep.
Definitely works. So let's go and move on to Tradeskill. If we haven't covered everything we have in our list, and this is definitely a mechanic that we will be talking again and again about as we know more, get to know more about the individual faction, how it's going to work. But this is also to help us and help VR with some ideas maybe. So let's go into the Tradeskill part. So the way I see Tradeskill, like I mentioned earlier on, is I want Tradeskillers to have value in an MMO as well. I want that to be its own in-game entity by itself. You might have people that just want to go in Tradeskill in MMOs. It does happen. You're going to have your adventurers only, you're going to have your Tradeskills only, you're going to have people that want to do both. Make it have value. So the idea is at the end of the day, with your faction grinding, doing everything that you can, you become the Master City Tradesman, which will basically give you a special title, maybe special access to items, maybe special patterns depending on what you're doing, and you can unlock a shop inside the city. You can actually own a physical shop inside the city and sell your wares, blah blah blah. These are sort of the rewards that you could get becoming a Master City Tradesman through faction. Requirements to all this is basically you would have to go, and let's say there are 9 trade skills in the game. You ain't going to get it by just doing your trade skill faction. No, you have to learn and grind the basic factions of every other different trade skill to become a Master City Tradesman. What the example does, it basically gives it a time sink. It makes it something that's going to take time, and it's not something you're going to achieve overnight.
Right.
With this Master Tradesman faction, you can maybe unlock things for the city, and you would have to maintain this. You would have to constantly do city tasks, trade skill city tasks to the city to maintain your Master City Tradesman. So it's not something you obtain and boom, you're done, you're happy, you don't have to do it anymore. You constantly have to go in and do it. Do you want to add something next?
Well, there's 2 sides to this one. If I can get my thoughts straight in my head. Sorry, it's been a crazy couple weeks. If you have to get the faction for other crafters, or basically crafter guilds, or whatever you want to call them, it should not require you to do crafting per se, because we don't know if you're going to be able to just select one or whatever. But that would make you be social to the other crafters, which would almost mimic a political system. Because if you are the guild master, you kind of, all the other crafts answered you if you're a blacksmith, a carpenter, whatever. And I mean, I really like the idea. I really do. I enjoy a little bit of political intrigue every now and then. I mean, in SWTOR, I played the Inquisitor because that's what I thought was going to happen, and not. But it would seriously make me consider being a split time adventurer and crafter.
Well, basically, the idea is, Lex, that if you're, let's say, a carpenter or woodworker or whatever, and you've got to go and grind out all these other factions, you're not going to go and, go into a trade skill and start mounting down on a blacksmithing and start mounting down on pole. You might have to go for that specific craft trade. You might have to go out and gather wood or iron, or you might have to go and travel from one city to the other and transport goods. Those are the ways you would get your trade up for the individual crafting factions that aren't related to your craft. And what go on.
For rewards, there's a lot of possibilities here.
Oh yes.
Like say I'm the guild master for all the trade guilds. Well, I can set one crafting or one craft that gets a discount, like a major discount on stuff. Now, 9 times out of 10, someone's going to choose their own little one, right? But while I think that would make things very, very interesting, you kind of got to wonder, how do you fit more than one guild master? Because technically there's never more than one, you know? Unless you're just saying the guild master of this trade, and then you just get a big discount, and...
There's a bake-off.
Well, that's what basically
it would be.
It would basically be, your Master City tradesman of, X trade skill. That's what it would technically be. You would become the master tradesman for baking or fishing or woodworking, carpentry, alchemy, etc. Depending on what trade skill you have. That's your title for that city. That's what you've basically unlocked. You've become the Master City tradesman in alchemy. That's your domain. And it's something that basically not everybody's going to have right away. And it's going to, people are going to envy you. And this would unlock certain access that normal crafters would not get to. And I'm going to get into this now. Upgrade abilities for the city. Through factions, certain abilities, buildings can get upgrades. So picture a small city that has wooden walls. Now this is going a bit far out there. This obviously would take a lot of programming, a lot of work on VR side as well to work with people. But you could technically go and upgrade the city. So the city walls that were once wood start becoming stone. They start getting fortified, etc. Now you can get maybe you upgrade a building like a church, for instance, inside that city. Now because you got that faction, that church gives a buff to everybody. This goes into the global faction area. Everybody who has a certain amount of faction towards that city, they get that buff as well. That lasts for a certain amount of hours, days, weeks, etc. So you're basically, as a tradesman, city tradesman, you are basically doing the God's work for everybody else out there who are doing the adventuring only, this, that, and the other, don't have the time to go and do all this. You're actually engaging in, you're basically socializing with everybody else. Right. That's what we're talking about. Group encountering, talking to people. You're actually doing stuff that engage the community.
Right. Another neat idea would be that to incorporate multiple guild masters on more of a global scale would be, you can basically toggle projects on and off for a city. We'll say one project would be a crafting square expansion, or the crafting market expansion, which essentially doubles the crafting stations in each guild hall, or craft guild hall. But that would also incur an upkeep. Yeah. And people have to work together in order to keep that upkeep. Otherwise, that project goes away and you're back down to the original amount. The difficult part, and we've seen this in other games, the difficult part is getting the people to work together. Yep. Because some people are like, I don't want to give it up because I don't craft here. Or I don't want to give it up because I can go to my guild hall. You know? Yeah. That would be very tough to balance.
But these guild halls will have to be in the city itself. So I can see the cost of running a guild hall within a city to be quite high unless you actually participate in these type of things. Yep. So there could be a trade-off against that at the end of the day.
I mean, your benefits at the end of the day for actually working your butt off to become a Master City craftsman, like these are minor rewards, like opening up shops inside the cities, maybe having special access to special craft tables, special materials, special patterns, etc. And we talked about even adding a system similar to what we had in Landmark, where let's say for instance now because you have to keep and constantly maintain this, if you have an accident, for instance, or you go on holiday, God forbid you have an accident, but you go on holiday for a longer period of time, you don't want to lose that status and have it decay over time. So what about basically having the chance to, for up to maybe 6 weeks in advance, you can basically gather days where that faction stays in play, and as soon as you go on leave, every day you lose one of those days and it starts going back to 0, and once it starts reaching 0 and you're not there, your faction has decayed, you're tough out of luck. But it's giving you the chance. That's how you basically balance that out and make it fair for everybody.
For faction decay, like even say if I were to go on like a Christmas vacation, okay, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. I would like to see a cumulative amount gone. So the longer you're away, the bigger the hit per day. So the first day you're gone, it's only like 1 point, you know. Second day, 2 points, and then maybe 4, and then 8, you know, to the point where if I take 2 weeks off, I know that's gonna hurt. But at the same time, you know, because of how fast you can tune that, because I mean you can go 1 1 2 2 3 3 4 4 or whatever. I might not. I'll still get a hit, obviously, but it won't be like, oh, great, I'm starting from 0, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or you could do maybe a risk versus reward. The higher difficulty path you choose, the more of a hit you will end up getting if you're away.
So,
in which case, like, well, I made my bed, I got to sleep in it.
So there's obviously room for the trades. We didn't get too much info into it for the tradesman, because we basically looked at it from the perspective of Master City tradesmen. There's also there's plenty of things you can still do. Like I said, this is something that we will be keep on discussing, because I want to try and get as much in as I can. We're gonna basically be maybe 10 minutes over or whatever, but I'm gonna quickly go and jump into the trade adventuring side of faction, which we will call the general faction. Now we thought of cool rewards. Why it would make sense for you to maybe have this general faction. Some people might hate this idea, some people might love it. But what about having maybe safe travel accesses? Underground tunnel system to travel safely from City X to City X maybe, as a reward for the general faction. It's going to take obviously a long amount of time to do it, but that's something.
Or a smuggling faction,
yes,
maybe.
like a smuggling faction.
Yeah.
A lower city tax for you individually, a lower rent, city caravan escort quests that give you faction for the city. Like Josh brought up earlier on, prime real estate that you can purchase, etc. So those are some of the ideas that we had for trade and adventure faction, because I want to bring in the global faction idea, because I think this is pretty cool. I don't know if it's been done before in this kind of way. Let's say that something that affects the entire server that requires everyone to participate in this event. That may last hours, days, weeks and months. So an example is giants attack the city. City X, they attack Throne Fast. And then from that you unlock special factions for adventure and trade skill equally, giving players a faction boost maybe, so you get an additional faction quicker. Then you can have like global faction where for Throne Fast to go and trade with the halflings or trade with the elves, you have to unlock the trade routes that are related to faction. Adventurers, for instance, would go and have to clear out the trade routes. And you know, clear out to certain NPCs that are in these trade routes, wipe them out. The crafters would have to build watchtowers, as an example, along the route to protect the trading caravans. Now what this does is, let's say for instance, for us to unlock this trade route that basically opens up a global market for the general server, 1 month long, for instance, a month-long event, automatic caravans get sent from city to city. And let's say 100 caravans must reach their destination for that trade route to be unlocked. This is just a wide spectrum example. And it would require us as players to constantly either, you know, the trade skill is to constantly go and check and maintain these watchtowers. It might take the adventurers to constantly go and pick up quests and do some cleaning out, get rid of the encounters that came back and tried to attack the caravans. You could have like global notifications, stuff like this, global faction events that affect everybody on the server. So instead of having just public quests that reward you with gear, they actually do something for the server in general by affecting the game in general, by unlocking certain things like trade routes, maybe certain access to certain buildings. You could have different outcomes as well. You could have the giants, for instance, like the giant city, the giants getting attacked by the city as an example. What could happen there is either the giants defeat us and they attack the city, it gets torn to shreds, so now it's going to come down to the fact that we as adventurers and trade skillers are going to have to now do damage repairs, repair the city. We might have fought them off. Now we fought them off.
You're going to have to repair it, costs are going to be higher.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah.
Stuff like that. So if we defeat them, maybe they attack in double the amount of force. 2 days later, and these events last over a longer period of time, but they reward you with maybe, like I said, faction boost, stuff like that give you a little boost to gain more faction over a period of time because you're going to go grinding and stuff. So that's another idea we kind of had on global faction. Add global faction, make people interact with each other, work together.
The Terminus faction.
Yeah, exactly. Another aspect of the trade route system is you're going to have maybe intelligent different mobs attacking those caravans, depending on what they're transporting between the cities. So if it's gold, maybe you have a dragon swooping down. That becomes a PQ event on that road itself, that you have to defend the caravan, and you have to have 40, 50, 60 people just defending this caravan. So yeah, it can vary in size as well, depending on what is being transported.
Yeah. See, I really like the whole trade routes and the caravans, because if they do it so that you can do it with however many people, or maybe it's dynamic, kind of like how Guild Wars 2 does their dynamic quests. The more people that are there, the more difficult it is. Then I can see myself just waiting around for an announcement and just doing that on my own. Or maybe I've got, a guildie online. He's kind of bored. I'm kind of bored. Not a whole lot of activity on the server because for some reason we're playing at 4 a.m. And all of a sudden it says, trade route or a caravan's leaving, protect it. And we know that although it may be difficult, we have a chance to win by ourselves versus we still have just as equal amount of chance winning if there's like 50 people that just show up. That's something that's going to be very difficult for VR, but the work there kind of pays itself back in dividends because the community benefits so much.
Yep.
I mean, to this day, the only reason I still have Guild Wars 2 installed is because those public quests, I know I can just jump on, find one, and if there's just me, there's 2, there's 6, there's 30 people, we have just as good a chance of winning. And I'm still going to have a good time. And then I can log off and go my day.
You kind of broke up there, but yeah.
Get the gist of it, yeah.
And two more things quickly that we want to bring up, but we didn't have any time to make notes. But it's important to mention this, and this is one of Lex's requirements: class-specific faction. Class and race-specific faction. I would because I was talking to Josh about this. When as an example, EverQuest 2, you create your character, you've got max faction to that city where you start. That's not how it works in real life. Obviously I'm going to have a good alignment towards that city. I have a good alignment towards them. It doesn't mean my faction has to be max. Make me work for that. Like Josh said at the beginning of the show, let the faction grow over time and have meaning. So it basically goes through different levels and unlocks certain things for that race. I get to know a bit more about the background of my race, my city that I've done. The Lawkeeper comes in as an example that can get connected to that, the lawkeeping aspect of things. With me unlocking more faction towards my city, I get a deeper, in-depth background story into their lore. It might unlock at one point a quest that's, I think Josh, you talked about this. You reach the max faction, all of a sudden you get told about this secret tavern underground, underneath there, that has a holy relic. And maybe that can even connect to your epic quest, or connect to perception quest and stuff like this. So make race faction count. Make and definitely have class-specific faction, for Christ's sake. Give us class-specific faction that has multiple outcomes and gives us maybe different types of things to do. Alone on our screen, kill on site quests in general, gather items, trade skilling, something to do with certain areas. This can all be connected to class-specific faction. There's so much they can do with it, rather than just say, hey, go. And another point I want to bring up this is from Frogzor, what she talked about yesterday. Repeatable quests for faction. I don't mind grinding faction day in, day out to reach that faction. If it's something I have to do, fine. But don't give me one quest and go and kill 10 slugs or 10 rats over and over and over again. Spice it up. Make me maybe go and deliver something. Make me go and kill something. Make me maybe go into a dungeon that gives me more faction. For instance, I can get a 1k faction quest by going and completing a dungeon. I can get a 200 faction quest by delivering documents. Give us variance. Spice it up a bit.
You know,
exactly.
when I played WoW pretty hardcore with a raiding guild, I could deal with the crappy community because, you know, everyone was always yelling at each other about stupid things. I can deal with that. I can deal with the fact that the raids are easy. I can deal with the fact that the trade skills are garbage. What finally got me to go, you know what, I am done with this, was the fact that in order to raid, I had to do daily quests. And I had to do the same 13 daily quests every single day. After about 3.5 weeks, I said, you know what, cancel subscription, I'm done.
Life is not worth it. That's for sure.
Because it's incredibly boring.
Yeah.
Even if it's a good, you know, you could say you do this 100 times, they'll give you a big, crazy, epic sword. And like, no thanks. God, I had a thought. I freaking lost it.
Yeah.
I had a thought. It was driving me nuts. I tried to keep hold of it.
Try and keep hold of it, and I'll bring up quickly what Glenn said. You know, rather than repeatable quests, have quest chains. Exactly. Maybe have faction be a part of, you know, be its own story in itself that opens up a series of events. We even talked about the idea of basically, instead of getting faction for this quest, that quest, that quest, that quest, no, you go to an NPC or the faction NPC or whatever, however you want to do it. You see the reward at the end. Boom, it's max faction. But you don't know what you got to do for it. And you go through one epic long quest series, for instance. Another way of approaching it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100% right. And I also think that the persistent system should be able to assist with this as well. Yeah. Perception system, should I say. So you might have a beggar at the front of the city entrance that suddenly appears one day, and he's got a story to tell you, and that could add faction to the city. Then he's not there the following week. He'll only arrive back there maybe 4 months down the line. And so you go to the tavern and you can get faction over there. So they should break it up with that. You hear whisperings.
Yeah. Alex, if you can speak, I want you to bring up the idea you had at the beginning before we went live with your faction and the NPCs. Because I think that is very important.
Yeah, there's one thing I want to say with who was it that said it? Was it Glenn about the chains?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't do like 3 quest chains, for the love of God. Make them long chains, because then you can repeat that chain, and I'm cool with that. Long and then repeat. Yep. That's fine. If I don't feel like I'm doing the same thing week in, week out, I'm happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing with traditional faction systems is, you know, you've got your mob. For those of you, here's a little education for you. What mob actually stands for is mobile object. But you get a mob. You know, he's usually attached to a faction, maybe 2 or 3. And whatever faction that's on their bad side, you know, because some factions go up, some go down, some just go up, whatever. One thing that I kind of want to see is I want to see more complexity. I want to see like a faction web. And I don't mean visually see it. And I'm talking, when I kill an orc, there should be a ripple effect in my world of faction.
Yep.
So I get a big hit with his that his clan of orcs. Well, maybe they're allied with another clan of orcs that I get a little hit to, and then they're, so on and so forth, to the point where I'm not even worried about it. But that way, when I'm grinding a faction, there could be unknown repercussions.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm killing orcs, and they don't like me, but who's to say that maybe there's a separate faction of humans that I kind of want to get in with because I'm a Scar, and they're evil, But all of a sudden, through 2 or 3 links in the faction web, they were kind of inadvertently allied with that orc, So while I'm not saying it's going to be a 1-for-1, it's going to be like, for every 100 faction I lose with this orc, 2 steps down the line, I might lose 5.
But this is where the lore of the various clans and factions come into being. Because if you study that, if you read that, you're going to maybe get hints as to who they like in the past, who they actually enjoy, and who they hate.
I mean, I'm sure they'll tell you, like, faction loss of so-and-so.
But think of the benefits.
Yeah,
though.
but they should do it a little bit better than that.
You guys are talking about the decay of things. Talk about the benefits that this offers VR in itself. They could basically create quest series that basically get connected to these faction webs that you don't even know about. You go out and beat these down, and all of a sudden, you're building up factions somewhere else, and somebody that never spoke to you before, or a clan that never spoke to you before, starts talking to you. You've unlocked that city. You've gone through that little town or that little encampment. They just had a camp there. They were just standing there, waving their hands, saying hello as you pass by. All of a sudden, they might open up a quest series or perception or this and that. And this makes us in the game as well think about what we do and the repercussions it could have.
Right.
And when you look back at talking about the longevity of the game and Brad's fear of people not going to go back into the lower level areas, that also eliminates that effect as well automatically, because you might run along in that low level area that you haven't been in for a month, but because you've been grinding faction at the highest level, beating down those orcs and everything, the smallest clan in the lobby area, a small faction base has opened up, and they start talking to you and telling you about something that can be a dynamic quest series. So it's not going to be something that's not going to be useful to you, it's going to have value to you. So this actually benefits the game as well. I think that is great, because it makes us think about our choices and what we do. It makes it mean something.
Right.
Exactly.
And I mean, I know it's an awful lot to ask to have a ripple effect in a faction web. I mean, it is. The coding in my mind is sitting there just rolling over and over itself, going, "Oh my god!" But I mean, you don't have to go crazy. You don't have to do a literal, like, you lose 10 faction with this orc, and then 5 with this orc, and then 2.5 with this whatever kind of thing. You don't have to go on and on and on. You could just say minor or major and minor hits to faction when you kill this guy, because a major hit would be obviously the people he's directly allied with, his clan, the clan next door. But then you've got minor hits, because maybe on the other side of this mountain they're distant relatives are over there. Well, you're not going to get a major hit, you're going to get a minor hit. And it could be as many as you want. But here's the thing, when you're listing that stuff in chat, because I know they're going with like the old school EQ chat system with lost faction, gain faction, blah, 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 which is great. Don't get me wrong. I love it.
Yeah.
You can just say only show the minor or the major alterations. Don't even tell us about the minor ones, because that's a little mystery of life.
Let some of it be unknown.
Correct.
And we don't want this to be everywhere. It doesn't have to be with every faction. This can be something that can be done to certain, maybe special quest series that they want to do, or special perception things that they want to do. They can even add twists to it. So you could go and have your standard faction that you're going to go and grind, but at some point, if you're grinding the other web faction, it could have an impact on the faction that you're grinding there. So they can add twists to it and make us really think. And this also adds to the longevity of playtime. You're not going to go and rush from 0 to 50 or 0 to max like that, because it's going to have repercussion over repercussion and make you think twice about what you do in that world.
Yeah, I mean, look at EverQuest 1. Okay. It's amazing to think that, 17 years now, there are still quests that have not been discovered. Think about that. 17 years of people playing this one game. There are still quests that have not been found.
Maybe they will make believe.
No. The developers even stated during one of their anniversary videos that there are still this many quests undiscovered.
They're just saying that to keep people in the game.
No, because there's not that many people in the game anymore. But it's because you have all these factions interacting with the quest system, interacting with your players, that everyone in the entire environment of this game went completely nuts on it, and there's still stuff people didn't find.
Yeah.
I mean, and we look at World of Warcraft. I guarantee you every freaking little quest has been found. Not that that's really a bad thing, though, because there are people that love to run around discovering that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It would be also nice to have a faction that is time-based as well. Yeah, meaningful and time-based. So it could be limited in the sense that you have a traveling band of something like that you got to build a faction with them, and they disappear after a while. So that would also be something that would be nice to build on.
With decaying factions, because most games, they do seasonal events. Seasonal events, in some cases, also incorporate their own factions. And the problem is that after you do it the first year, you come back, your faction's already made, you can still buy everything from the vendors. Which is fine. But let's say you make a couple sets of quests for these events, okay? And they swap out from year to year. Well, this means if we have decay, that means by the time this rolls around again, our factions will be back down to 0. The quests might be different, some might be the same. But it gives everybody a reason to revisit it. Because my faction's there, if I want to go get snowballs from the snowball vendor, and I have to be friendly with him, and I'm neutral, because it's been a year since I've done it, I got work to do.
Yep.
The fact that some of the quests could be different just makes it more interesting.
Yep.
Versus I do the same, catch rabbits every 4 years or every year for this one guy so I get snowballs.
I want to quickly bring up the disclaimer, because we haven't had that towards the end. We are not related to VR. We do not work for VR. We're not paid by VR to do our show. We're doing this out of passion towards VR and the game they're creating, to entertain you people out there, to help VR think of things that they might not have thought about, maybe help joggle their brain to get that last thought in that they were looking for. And that's all we're here to do, is entertain and help VR along
expand
the road.
Your minds without the need to huff gnomes.
Exactly. and to basically view the game with an open mind, because nothing's set in stone, and we're in a day and age where technology is not a problem anymore. The possibilities are endless. So we're here to entertain everybody, and that's to talk about ideas, and that's the disclaimer. So obviously we can't cover everything. Obviously you guys can see that this will require multiple shows, so this will be basically faction discussion number 1, and we're going to basically end it here for now, because we've basically technically gone 20 minutes over. We're trying to keep the shows down to an hour. We're going to end it here. Thanks for joining us. Next Thursday, I think we're talking about guilds. I can't remember. I haven't got the calendar in front of me. But I think we're talking about guilds, and that will obviously connect again to factions. So you're going to see over the next couple of months a lot of the mechanical side of the game, core mechanics, That's what we're going to be covering for the next couple of months, and we're going to obviously, hey, we're going to have a Paladin discussion as well. We've got Paladin discussion. You know, thank you VR for releasing that and changing the Crusader to the Pally, so that opens up another show for us to talk about, revisit, and
I will say though, I had the sinking suspicion it was going to change. I really did, because a Crusader just is too almost warrior-like in its description.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I got this feeling that it's
very general.
Yeah.
So
and I was right.
If you guys want to hang out with us and talk about what we do on the show or anything like that, you can join our Discord. Zathras, if you're there, just bang in the link. You can join our Discord server where we tend to talk about some of our ideas for the upcoming shows with everybody and see what people have to say about it, get your feedback. We just want to hang out with us and talk about Pantheon, because we do talk about the game also around the clock if we can. You're welcome to join the Discord server, and we'll see you all next Thursday for, I think it's Guilds. I haven't got advertisements up yet. I'm sorry, people. I've been slacking as of late, but I will get that done this weekend, all the advertisements, so that you don't have to listen to me ramble on and on and on. So with that, guys, have a great night. Hope you enjoyed the show, and if you have any ideas towards what we talked about, bring them to us and we'll try and get them into the next show that we cover on Faction. If you want to be on the show and join us when we do discussions, you're welcome to join us. Just hit us up, let us know when you'll be available and when you'll be willing to join the show, and we'll get you sorted out.
And don't forget, I've got like 3 shows left.
Yep.
Before I move.
Lexa's moving, so quick information, Lexa is moving, so he will be away for a good 4 or 5 weeks before we see him again at the end of February. Kodiak is currently actually moving as well. He's in the middle of sorting out his one house in between his current place of stay and his house that is coming, so that's why Kodiak hasn't been around. He should be able to join us though. He's given me the info that he should be back for the time when Lexa is absent, so he'll basically jump in for Lex, and so Kodiak will be back. He's just very busy.
We all know that Kodiak's just jealous that he doesn't look good being illustrated the way I was.
Right, so have a good night, guys, and thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Cheers, guys.
Be safe.